I'm Melvin L. Raymond, attorney and counselor at law. Welcome to Raymond Law Live. We invite you to tell us what topic you would like us to cover in future broadcasts. Simply email us at mraymondattorney@sbcglobal.net or call us at area code 314-534-2800 and tell us what topic you would like us to cover in future broadcasts, and we will deal with your topic on a future broadcast. Sadly, financial exploitation and abuse and neglect of the elderly occurs far too often in this country. While the incidence and prevalence of elder abuse, including financial exploitation, is hard to determine, it is of concern to lawmakers here in Missouri as well as in other states across the country. Too many of our seniors have been injured, exploited, or otherwise mistreated by someone on whom they depend for care and protection. Many abusers are family members providing caregiving. The topic on today's broadcast is protection of the elderly and disabled, financial exploitation. What is financial exploitation? Missouri is one of 49 states that specifically distinguishes financial exploitation as a reportable category of elderly abuse. Here in the state of Missouri, there is a law which establishes the crime of financial exploitation of the elderly or a person with a disability. That is a crime, financial exploitation of the elderly or a person with a disability. This crime, financial exploitation of the elderly or a person with a disability, is committed if an individual uses deception, intimidation, undue influence, or force to obtain control over an elderly or disabled person's property. These acts, that is deception, intimidation, undue influence, or force, must be done knowingly and with the intent to permanently deprive the elderly or disabled individual of the use, benefit, or possession of his or her property. This exploitation must be to the detriment of the elderly or disabled individual or for the benefit of the exploiter. Now let's talk a little bit about what these actions mean, starting with deception. So as used in the law here in the state of Missouri, deception means that there is misrepresentation or concealment of a material fact relating to the terms of a contract or agreement entered into with the elderly or disabled person, or to the existing or pre-existing condition of any property involved in such a contract or agreement. Deception relating to property can take various forms, including but not limited to selling or otherwise transferring or encumbering property and failing to disclose a lien, adverse claim, or other legal impediment to the enjoyment of the property. So misrepresentation or deception involves frequently the property of a disabled person or an elderly person. If you have a question or comment, you can send it to us on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/Raymond Law Live, or you can send us a tweet. That's Twitter @Raymond Law Live. So we invite your questions and comments on today's topic. Now, what is intimidation as defined by the statute making it a crime for exploitation of the elderly? Well, intimidation is a threat of physical or emotional harm to an elderly or disabled person, or communication to an elderly person or a disabled person that he or she will be deprived of food, nutrition, shelter, prescribed medication, or medical care and treatment. What about undue influence? What is undue influence? Undue influence, as far as the statute is concerned, is defined as influence by someone who exercises authority over an elderly or disabled person in order to take unfair advantage of that person's vulnerable state of mind, neediness, pain, or agony. Undue influence includes, but is not limited to, the improper or fraudulent use of a power of attorney, guardianship, conservatorship, or other fiduciary authority. Fiduciary authority is just, so basically it's a crime that involves or similar to the elements of a stealing offense. And in fact, prior to the legislature creating the crime or establishing the crime of exploitation of an elderly person or disabled person, those kind of offenses were prosecuted as stealing offenses more generally, i.e., for instance, stealing by deceit. Now, who is protected against financial exploitation? The statute. The Missouri law covers and protects all adults 60 years of age or older, and it is not necessary that the elderly individual suffer from some disease or infirmity associated with their age and affecting their capacity to understand or make decisions. So the key here, it covers any individual who is age 60 years or older. So, what is the punishment for the crime of committing exploitation of the elderly person or disabled person? Well, punishment depends upon the value of the property involved. If the value of the property involved is less than $50, the offense is punishable as a Class A misdemeanor. Here in Missouri, a Class A misdemeanor carries a punishment of imprisonment for up to 1 year. That's a Class A misdemeanor. If the property involved, the value of it is greater than $50, over $50, then the offense of exploitation is punishable as a Class E felony. And the punishment for a Class E felony is imprisonment for not more than 4 years. If the value of the property involved is $750 or more, it is punishable as a Class D felony. Now, the punishment for a Class D felony is imprisonment not to exceed 7 years. Finally, if the property involved is valued at more than $75,000 or more, the offense is punishable as a Class A felony, and that's a very serious felony. A Class A felony is punishable by imprisonment not less than 10 years to 30 years or life imprisonment. So the criminal punishment for exploitation of the elderly and disabled can be a very serious matter. Now, there is another law created here in Missouri as a tool to help fight against financial abuse among the elderly and the disabled persons. That is the Senior Savings Protection Act. The Senior Savings Protection Act. That's a Missouri law, and it authorizes broker-dealers to take two types of action. The first is broker-dealers or any person associated with a broker or dealer may notify certain persons of potential financial exploitation. That's the first action. Also, broker-dealers may refuse a request for disbursement of funds from a brokerage account. We're talking about brokerage accounts here. These are typically investment accounts of a qualified adult for up to 10 days if the broker-dealer reasonably believes that the requested disbursement will result in financial exploitation of a qualified elderly person or a disabled person. The broker-dealer is allowed to file a notice of concern that could trigger an investigation by the Missouri Securities Division and the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services. So that's another protection against financial abuse of the elderly and disabled, the Missouri Senior Savings Protection Act. Now, there are other remedies we mentioned in addition to those I've just mentioned. It's not limited just to the criminal statute for exploitation, but a victim of elderly abuse or exploitation can also pursue an action under the adult abuse statute. We've covered the adult abuse statutes and filing claims under those statutes on prior broadcasts. So that remedy always exists, or does exist, in addition to the remedies for exploitation of the elderly and the Senior Savings Protection Act. Again, if you have any questions or comments, you can contact us on our Facebook, facebook.com/Raymond Law Live. Now, what about reporting financial exploitation and abuse, neglect of individuals 60 and older? You can report any acts of financial exploitation and abuse that you suspect by contacting the Department of Health and Senior Services Elder Abuse Hotline, and that's a 24-hour hotline. That number for that hotline is 1-800-392-0210. Again, the hotline for the Department of Health and Senior Services Elder Abuse and Neglect is 1-800-392-0210. So if you suspect financial exploitation or abuse, you can call the hotline and report. Now, in addition to the Senior Services hotline that I just mentioned, there's also the Missouri Attorney General's Consumer Protection Hotline. That hotline if you call that hotline, they will investigate allegations of financial abuse involving telemarketers or other consumer-directed operations. Often, the elderly or the disabled become the target of telemarketers or others who are seeking to sell services or products. So they sometimes target the elderly, and that is a problem that the lawmakers here in the state of Missouri and also in other states have recognized. The hotline number for the Missouri Attorney General's Consumer Protection is 1-800-392-8222. So those are two ways you can report elder abuse by exploitation or financial abuse of elders. So those hotlines are very important, so remember those. So there is something that you can do with respect to financial exploitation of elderly and abuse. Again, we invite your questions and comments. You can contact us on our Facebook page. I have a question here. What type of proof is necessary when filing the financial exploitation or hotline, I guess, if you hotline someone for a suspected financial exploitation of an elderly person or a disabled person, what kind of proof is necessary? When you call, you would want to state any facts that you have that support your belief that financial exploitation may be occurring. Whoever takes the call on the hotline will ask you supporting facts that you may have that may lead you to believe that there is financial exploitation. That could be, for instance, you know that someone has forged the signature of an elderly person on a check. That could be just one example that you may lead you to believe that there has been financial exploitation. And exploitation can take many different forms. If you believe that a person, for instance, has sold some property of an elderly or disabled person without that person's consent, or that person did not have the capacity to knowingly consent to the sale of some property, then that would be the kind of facts that would lead one to support a claim of financial exploitation. And there are just endless scenarios. Whenever there is some kind of fraudulent conduct involved or misrepresentation, and you suspect that an elderly person is being deprived of or the property is being taken, and it could be any kind of property. It could be an investment account, or it could be some real estate, it could be money, it could be a bank account. Whenever that person their property is being stolen from them in some fashion by fraud or deceit, then that would give you reason to suspect that there's been a reason for exploitation of the elderly. And in those instances, you would want to contact the hotline number that I've previously given to you. So that's what you can do if you suspect that there is financial exploitation of the elderly. We encourage you to contact the hotlines, or you can contact an attorney if you suspect that an elderly person is the victim of exploitation. So we encourage you to do that. Now, so that covers our topic for today. We're winding up our time to discuss our topic. So I want to thank all of you who have watched this broadcast live, and those of you who will be watching the broadcast at a later time. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you again. If you have any further questions or comments, or you want to contact us for representation, you can call our office at area code 314-534-2800. That's our office telephone number. Or you can contact us on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/Raymond Law Live. Or you can tweet us. That's Twitter at Raymond Law Live. Join us on our next broadcast on Tuesday, June 18th at 6 p.m. Central. And remember, when you fight, know your rights.